Was it the CCP, solar flares, or software glitch? At this point, really nobody knows, but let's speculate a little bit. 75,000 plus people nationwide were out of cell phone reception with AT&T. But it wasn't just AT&T that was affected. What else was affected? Well, there's a long list. Here we go. Verizon, Microsoft 365, DoorDash, Wells Fargo, Cox, Facebook, League of Legends, Instagram, AWS, OpenAI, Starlink, AT&T, Cricket, Reddit, Verizon, T-Mobile, Consumer Cellular, the list goes on. It's a lot of things were affected. The first thing I thought was, oh, this potentially is a CCP. It's a attack from the inside. The reason I opted in for the inside and not an EMP or not a solar flare is because you would see the detriment of impact on other things, like even consumer electronics, but not through the infrastructure, not through the networking of infrastructure. But a lot of people weighed in, including experts. So the first expert I want to weigh in on this is a YouTube channel called Suspicious Observers. I'll link them down below. I actually really like the channel, and they break down all of the reasons why they think it's a solar flare. And it's compelling, including showing the graph in conjunction with the timing of the solar flare. Now, he got a lot of flack from people who were like, it wasn't a solar flare, etc., and he had some science to back it up. He lines this out. Number one, I can't respond to everyone. Please help me respond to people. The largest and most complex networks are the most vulnerable. That's the USA. Well, I agree. The USA is the most complex and the most vulnerable, but let's continue. The second thing he says is, no, we would not expect it to hit everything, and in fact, this is the most widespread number and range of networks, solar impact, in technological history. So there's that. I mean, this is coming from the guy who studies this kind of stuff. I assume has an academic background in it and does it for a living via his social media feed on YouTube. What else does he have to say? It's a huge risk to do a cyber attack. So they took a risk on secondary infrastructure and didn't attack power, water, military? I don't think so. Well, I got to disagree with you there because that's not how it works. Because when you have a target of opportunity, hence opportunity, when that window opens up, you take advantage. So just because other infrastructure like water, military weren't affected, that's not how it works with decentralized operators who are tying into or trying to infiltrate these types of infrastructure. And when they do that, if they break in, they don't go, hey, we made it. We're inside. So we can shut this system down. Oh, but wait, we can't continue to do this because the other guys aren't in. That's not how it works. The reason I think it came from within is because all the infrastructure attacked was very deliberate and nothing else was impacted or affected. So I'm weighing on the side of either software glitch or something internal where all of these systems, including Verizon, there is a statistic where AT&T bought $19 billion worth of assets from Verizon, which means a lot of the towers that Verizon are on are owned by AT&T. So hence the reason why it affected multiple facets. With all that being said, he certainly thinks it's solar flares. And so do a lot of experts who specialize in solar flares. And I would think for confirmation bias, if you're a solar flare expert, you would want that to be. But here's the catch and the caveat. One, no experts from the government have weighed in, which I'm certainly not saying that's the reason it didn't happen. But let's take somebody else as an expert. So we have this local Fox News affiliate that is talking about how this did not come from a solar flare, and it's conclusive. And here's his evidence.
But we could say for near certainty, at least with the reports initially, that these flares did not cause the AT&T outage. Here's the reason why. First, the first reports of the outage came 3 hours at least after the last solar flare occurred.
All right, so we got it. Inaccurate timing. It happened 3 hours before the outage. I'm no expert on solar anything, but the fact that a solar flare happened and in 3 hours this is impacting infrastructure doesn't seem likely. And I don't think it takes 3 hours from the solar flare happening to it impacting our country. There is timing, obviously, as an advance, but I don't think it's 3 hours. Let's continue.
cell phone cell phone frequencies rather live in a completely different realm called the ultra high frequency level.
Okay, so he's lining out that this specific flare affected HF comms, not UHF, based on the frequency and range or the severity of the flare, and it shouldn't have impacted UHF, which is cell phone communications, ultra high frequency. So, good case in point. Let's continue.
United States, we wouldn't have had that on our cell phones. In fact, it made a difference on the other side of the globe where it was daytime. That's where the daytime radio interference occurred, not here because it was nighttime.
So he lays it out. There's a day side and there's a night side. It should have interfered with the other side of the world, not ours. If you're a flat earther, you don't buy into any of this, but I buy into the fact that our earth is round. And one side is going to be affected where the other side is not as affected. Now, there's both sides of that coin. What's my theory? CCP. It's a pretty easy theory. Let's go into it. So look at this tweet right here. Now, this tweet came from my good friend Heather, who's going to be at our Cyber AI conference talking about these exact issues with her husband, Joe Kent, who's running for Congress in Washington State, as well as other experts. We do a conference every single month on a specific subject matter. We did communications. We're going to do first aid. We're going to do homeschooling. And this go around in the first week of March, we're going to be focused on this. You can sign up for it at fieldcraftsurvival.com in Provo, Utah. The link's down below. So when I lay this out, this is the tweet. For those just tuning in, this is the context. Happened yesterday. Lobbyists dump Chinese clients after blacklist threats. That includes the Vogel Group, Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, Schrack, and Akin, Gump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld. Most notable is the Vogel Group, which includes DGI. And if you're the CCP, you're like, how dare they do that to us? And you grossly impact everything that they could touch. And at this point, this is my argument in very pointedly getting into a window of opportunity. They take advantage and they shut down the infrastructure. Why is that a potential impact to you? Well, here's the thing. One, there is over 142,000 cell phone towers. At the end of 2022, there were 142,000, and there are 452,200 outdoor small cell nodes. That is a lot of infrastructure that affects a lot of the country. If you're one of the 75,000 who didn't have cell phone coverage, you didn't have the ability to call 911, even on SOS mode. Why? Because the entire infrastructure is tethered in communications to that cell phone. So it shut it down completely, unless you had a Wi-Fi connection that was pouring through internet. And even then, some of the internet was impacted. So how do you get around this? Well, you have to have a contingency, which we'll talk about at the end of this. Also, the cell phone companies do not want you to have this kind of infrastructure because they want to vector you in and have you funneled into one wireless capability. It's efficient, it's cheaper for them, and they make the most profits. Here's the stat. In 2022, estimates had 72% of adults and 82% of children live in homes with only wireless phone services, which means the majority of the country is not using landlines. Now, why would a landline be impactful? Well, when your cell phone goes down and you need comms with anybody, landline to landline, which is very analog, it's a hard wire, allows you to communicate. Sat-based iridium, that's an option. It's communicating over the horizon. Now, that Russian nuke program might negate that. Basically, if you want to leave people in the dark, you shut down the infrastructure from within. That's why I think it's an inside attack coming through the internet, disrupting service. This is allowing us, in a good way, to realize how comfortable and complacent and also vulnerable we are as a nation. A lot of people are very solely dependent on all the things in their cell phone, from the hike and tracking their heart rate, from the GPS navigation and navigating to their destination, to emergency services and communications. You are using your cell phone for a lot more than you think. If you turn off your cell phone, you turn it upside down, you put it in a drawer, could you survive? One of the things I recommend is having a silent capability, which is a Faraday capability, via silent, which is basically a Faraday bag. Because if this was an external attack and it was potentially going to fry, maybe a natural disaster like a solar flare, having that specific device in a Faraday bag could protect your electronic devices. But if it's a hack attack, there's not much you could do about it because it's coming from within. So have the contingencies. At a minimum, have ham radio communications, have SAT-based communications, and potentially have a landline. I mean, I'm going to look into it. I'll report back to you guys when I figure this out, but I want a landline now. And I imagine there's a lot of people who were depending on that infrastructure who are now thinking about putting in a landline, which I don't think is a bad idea. Have all of them because you want a PACE plan and your combo contingency plan. That's a must. We talk about this and more in many videos we did on Fieldcraft Survival. I'll link those down below to give you guys a reference. And also, I'm off to the underground, patreon.com/Mike Glover, to talk about these things that I can't talk about. I appreciate you guys. Until next time, peace out.